Well, now we're starting a chapter on acids and bases. And in this video, I want to give you a little bit of instruction about the very first lab that you're going to do, experiment 11.1. First of all, if you don't have exactly all of the specific things that he wants you to test in this lab, that's really not a big deal. Get something similar. You can use a variety of household items, whether different foods or whether different chemicals that you may happen to have available. If you don't have an apple, maybe you have some other type of fruit that you can test. It doesn't make a whole lot of difference. Just try to get a wide variety of everything, including some foods to some soaps and some detergents, just so you can get a basic overall feel of what the different pHs of those types of things are going to be. So again, if you don't have exactly everything that he says to use for the lab, be creative and use some substitutions and that will be fine. I want to talk a little bit about the use of litmus paper. Some of you particularly may have younger siblings that will be taking chemistry in later years after you take it, and so they'll be reusing the same lab kit. And what I want to tell you about is just the fact that you can take this litmus paper and you can actually do something with it so that you can get more bang for your buck out of it. Your litmus paper is going to be about this long. And so you can actually, now you want to make sure your hands are dry before you do this. You can actually take this litmus paper and you can actually tear it into about 3 pieces so that you can then use it to test. So in place of just testing one thing with a piece this big, you'll actually be able to take that same piece of paper and test about 3 different things with it. Okay. Now, the other thing is that he tells you in the book to take the litmus paper and dip it into what you're testing. And I'm a little confused about that because I was always taught that that's a really, really horrible lab technique. And so what I want you to do instead is that whatever you're testing, if you take your stirring rod and you dip it into whatever you're testing, I have lemon juice in this container here, get some lemon juice on the end of it and then just touch it to the litmus paper that you've got, and you may have to do it a couple times to make sure you get enough on there. But then once you do that and you get the paper wet, then you'll be able to see whether the paper changes color or not. And this did. I had blue litmus paper. It's probably hard to see in the video exactly what color it is because it's so light. But then when I touched the lemon juice to it, it did turn red. And again, so you may not be able to see it real well just because of the lighting in the video. So when you're testing, again, don't take the whole piece and dip it, tear it into small pieces, then take your stirring rod, dip it into your solution, and then touch it to the paper to be able to test it that way. So that will, first of all, it will conserve litmus paper for you, and then it also, really what it does is it prevents you from contaminating your solution if you were going to be testing something else with it. So I would just prefer that you learn proper technique from the very beginning. You may also be wondering why he always tells you in between what you're testing to rinse the beaker out with both tap water and distilled water. The reason for that is that a lot of tap water has some other ions in it. I know where we live, we have really hard water, and so there's a lot of calcium in the water and other minerals that just come from our natural well water. Depending on where you get your water from, it's likely that there are some other ions in it, and a lot of tap water is very slightly basic already anyway. And so if you rinse your container only with tap water, you may alter the pH of what you're going to put in it next. It would help if you don't have any distilled water. It will help if you dry it out, if you dry your container out, and that will help cut down on the chance that you're going to contaminate it. It won't completely solve the problem, but it would help. If you don't have any distilled water, I wouldn't say that means you shouldn't try to do the experiment. I'd still go ahead and try to do it, but you'll just have to be extra careful to make sure that you have everything dry before you put the next solution that you're going to test into that beaker. Okay. I think that's all I needed to tell you about that. He talked today a lot about the characteristics of acids and bases. I think most of that was probably pretty self-explanatory from your reading, so I hope you enjoy doing your lab.